I'm sure y'all recall, 2 weeks ago, we made it almost all the way through our governance committee agenda, leaving one final policy that it looked like we were going to have quite a bit of discussion around. It was presented by Board Member Player. We invited everyone to send along their edits and ideas for this public participation policy. Thank you very much to the 3 board members who contributed to this effort. And then Dr. Sevier and I worked to create an amalgamation of all of those to hopefully come up with a policy that everyone can feel comfortable with. Although, of course, that's also open for discussion tonight as well. And since she first brought it to the floor, I have asked Board Member Player to present this new version of the policy, and then we'll move on to the motion and hopefully second and discussion around that and see if we can get this settled.
Thank you, Board Member Masters. And I'd like to thank the board members and the staff for the work in adding into this. Just to give a little bit of background history of this policy, the last public presentation I chaired, Chair Elrod was out sick, and I performed it, and I chaired the meeting. And realizing the discussions I was having from the public did not correlate with the policy. And then, so therefore, I did not implement the policy. I actually broke policy to let people speak. And realizing at that point that there needed to be changes to the policy to make it more accessible to the public. And so that's why I brought this forward to start a discussion. Because we do policy different legislation, sunshine laws, I was not able to formally work it around for a formal matter with my board members. So I brought it to, and I made the policy conservative on purpose. And because working coalitions is easier to start from a foundation and was easier to expand than to contract. And so that was my purpose for the original draft, with full anticipation that my fellow board members will make amendments to expand it to something that we all can agree on. I think it's has become even a better policy with it, and with everyone's input through the staff and through Chair Masters' process. So the first part, just kind of walking through the policy, bringing formal business for the board. We made it more transparent, so understanding if someone made a very formal presentation, the process to go to that, we expand some timelines to give more time to the executive committee to process and determine what would be possible or what would be determined, not determined, put some time constraints on that because there wasn't anything specific, and something for the executive committee to work through their own process, but make that process a little bit more explicit. Then the second part is the public participation with board meetings. So we clarified, expanded the time we clarified the time in which you can sign up for the agenda and gave it a time. And when we also expanded the topics, which it could be to be discussed or be remarked on by the public. Before, you had to speak on something regarding the agenda. Now it's been on matters in business that belongs to the district or the Board of Education. You cannot, and it's something we're very, I won't speak for the board, but that we do not reference individual or students by name, that it should be high-level discussions on issues and not about specific employees or students. In specific cases, just for privacy, particularly since we're dealing with minors, and then also respect to the employees, that should be dealt in a different matter, in a different format, in a different process. Going down to continue, we expanded the public participation to 40 minutes and the speaking allotment to 2. I would also like to say, I know there was some discussion, particularly in the public atmosphere, about this. Metro Council's public participation is 30 minutes. So that's where that initially came from, to be on par with our counterpart body. And so now this is actually greater than the Metro Council's public participation policy that they have. And the time is 2 minutes per person. So that was expanded to make sure we can expand the number of people that can participate. In the continuation, chair can recognize someone who's not on the agenda in the public interest. Majority members of the board can overrule that decision if necessary, or if they disagree, by majority vote of the board. And then also this leaves some accessibility aspects of, well, let me go up one more, that you cannot speak on behalf of another individual. So if someone else came and they cannot be there and someone else said, I'm going to speak on their behalf, that cannot happen. That's always been part of the policy. That hasn't changed, but they put that in there. The only exception is if you need a language translator. So a language translator can speak on the person who needs the translation. And then longer comments can be submitted to the board in a written format. And then the chair has the authority to terminate any remarks that seems disruptive or do not adhere to the board rules. So that is the new policy that has been formed. I'd like to thank my fellow board members for their contributions to this and making this a better policy and a more inclusive policy that we have. So I will turn over back to Chair Masters.
Thank you. First, I would entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, thank you. Now let's move on to discussion. I'm going to start with myself. I just wanted to point out that among the ideas having to do specifically with the length of time, we had things ranging from 30 minutes total, 3 minutes each, 1 hour, 3 minutes each. And then we had another board member recommend the 40 minutes, 2 minutes each, which is, that allows for the same number of people as would an hour for 3 minutes each. So this is an attempt at compromise. Just wanted to point that out. I also know some members of the public had some concerns, specifically about the speaking on behalf of someone else. So that's why we chose to just clarify within there, a translator is acceptable. That wasn't previously clear in the policy, although as my understanding, that was always the case. But sometimes we need to make things explicit to be clear. So having said my bit, does anyone else have comments?
Okay.
Oh, did you have something else?
Just real quick.
Rita?
Okay.
Yeah.
There was also discussion, or was emails asking us to explicitly put that be every board meeting. We did not put that in here just because it's part of state law and just because how our lovely state legislature tend to make changes on a whim. We don't want to come back to a policy. So we will be in accordance with state law just to make sure we're doing, so we don't always have to revisit the policy every time our state legislature decides the inkling to change their law.
That's right. So
that's the
doing
reason
it
behind that.
only once a month wouldn't be an option anyway.
Yeah.
That's right. Oh, I also wanted to say there was one recommendation to do it prior to board meetings, and that is also not allowed. According to state law, it has to be during the actual board meeting. So, yes, Berthina. Or Cheryl, as I'll call you tonight, since you have Cheryl's board and thing in front of you.
Oh, yeah.
Just
Your
kidding.
name tag.
Just kidding.
You put them out.
We'll start with Berthina. For real.
No, press the button.
Just push the button? Oh, okay. I just want to thank you, Chair Emily, for working on this, as well as Frida for bringing this policy to our attention and working, did I say Frida? Yes, for bringing it to our attention and working to update our policy to reflect what our community is looking for engagement in our from the board and from the community. And so I just appreciate the work that has been done on this. I appreciate the compromise that has taken place so that we can get a good policy that works for everyone. So thank you so much.
And I just want to say, again, thank you for this. A lot of the edits have been incorporated. But I also want to say that this was never intended as a means of preventing the public from weighing in on any meeting. So I think the rewrite is going to be very helpful when people want to speak at board meetings. So thank you for incorporating as many of the changes as we possibly could get in this. So I appreciate it.
Thank you for that. We did try to, and thank you to Dr. Severe for helping to make that happen. I want one more thing I wanted to sort of underline is the difference between the formal business before the board and public participation, and that first segment does not refer to members of the public. You do not need to sign up 2 weeks ahead or submit written materials. That is more, if we had an organization, perhaps another public official who felt like they needed to inform us about something specific. But for individuals wishing to speak, it is still the noon the day before the meeting, and there is not, at least within this, a requirement to submit anything in writing prior. So, Tyler, yes.
Yes,
Or
thank
Deborah
you. I appreciate that a lot of the changes that I had hoped to make, I've seen have been incorporated into this. I'm especially pleased to see that you no longer have to speak on what's on the agenda. That was kind of the impetus for me wanting to make a change in the first place before anything even started. So I'm really glad to see that one not there anymore. I did want to say that will obviously do the will of the board, but personally, I believe that if someone is passionate enough to come speak to the board and they jump through all the hoops and they do all the sign up and everything, then I think that it's our job to listen to them and consider their statements. And I would love for there not to be a time limit on people to speak to the board. However, I can see that that's not necessarily the will of everybody else. I would love to propose that we discuss the difference between an hour and 40 minutes. I think people are used to having 3 minutes to speak. And when you have a weighty topic that you want to speak about, condensing it into 2 minutes can be extremely difficult. Of course, again, I will go with the will of the board, but I think I would prefer to see us at 1 hour with 3 minutes to speak for myself. And I'd like to hear from other people as to why they would prefer that shortened time.
Thank you. So let's see, I had Chair Elrod, and then I have Board Member O'Hara Block.
Thank you. So the past participation, public participation policy was from 2016. So as chair, I started implementing it along with a number of other policies that we weren't following at the time. So I, at the time, was really vocal on if there were changes that anybody wanted to please go ahead and bring those forward. So I appreciate that we have done so, and that there are some changes to it that the board feels like they can get behind. I know there's been some unhappiness with it being done, but again, I appreciate the action that was taken so that we can have this discussion on the board floor and try to come to a consensus about it. I want to make sure that we're really clear that public participation is not the only time that the public can, of course, reach us. When I was first looking at implementing this policy and several others, I knew this policy from its past representation or its past example, its original example, I should say, would be controversial because it hadn't been followed for many, many years. And so I knew that I needed to give people an advance notice and, of course, discuss it at a glance, make sure that people knew that they could modify it as individual board members, all of those things. But I also wanted to make sure that we as board members were still plenty available. And within that, I did a lot of research on what other school districts are doing, not just in Tennessee, but I thought it was really important that we also look at sister districts that are of similar size to us. And I saw a lot of people sticking with 30 minutes. I agree that 30 minutes seemed too short. A lot of times it was maybe not an amount of time in total. It was 60 seconds, or it was enrollment when you get to the board floor. All of those things I felt were very difficult and frankly, not going to be equitable for people. It would all depend on who could get here first and who would have access to it and those kinds of things. So I think this is a pretty good middle ground from some of the conversations I had had and also from that research. Also, please know that we are still available online. Within that research, I found that most school boards don't put their contact information out there in the public. And of course, that's a debate, that's a whole nother floorboard. But For us, we do have our availability, our contact information on our website, and we, of course, are happy to hear from our own constituents. So I appreciate this being done. The 40 minutes for 2 minutes feels pretty good within what I've seen within the state. It's more than what I see with most other districts, and within the comparison to size. When I did the other statewide or a countrywide version. So that would be my feedback. But my understanding of the school board member that came up with 40 minutes was that they got that from somewhere else. But that was not me, so I don't want to speak on behalf of that person.
Would that person like to
I
speak?
think that was me. In thinking about this and trying to think through, 30 minutes might feel like too little for us, given the number of constituents that we have that generally want to come speak with the board. An hour is a lot of time for folks that are here for a variety of different reasons, whether that's community members or staff members or others to sit here to listen and have like good attention as well, right? I think one of the things that I really want to see is, as we are doing public participation, that we're all paying really close attention to what it is that folks that have taken the time to come and talk can do. So 40 minutes was like more than what we see Metro Council doing, which their public participation policy is 30 minutes. And when you shorten to 2 minutes per person, it allows more people to also participate. And so it felt like a good compromise between a couple of different options. And frankly, that was literally where it came from in my head. I thought, oh, if we go a little bit longer and a little bit shorter, we get more people and more time without it feeling overly long to folks who are concerned about timing.
I want to ask, I'm Dr. Severe, and if you don't know the answer to this, it's totally fine. Do you have any idea, sort of on average, how many folks typically sign up for public participation?
Chair Masters, that number has varied wildly over the years. If I'm not mistaken, we've had as few as 0 and as many as 73. To my memory, I see that Dr. Gentry has her hand up, and she is our resident historian.
Okay. Thank you for that, Dr. Gentry.
I'm not about to give you any history, but I have a question, though, and my question actually dovetails off of your inquiry. So I started off, when I asked for this to be deferred, my question was, how do we, I don't know that I'm still understanding the problem we're trying to solve with the policy in general, to be honest. I don't know what problem we're trying to solve. So let's talk about the 40 minutes, and I've heard somebody use some math. If it's 3 minutes in an hour, it all works out to the same amount of people. Let's make it 40 at 2 minutes, and that allows, air quotes, more people. That allows 20 people, to be
Correct.
clear.
Yep.
That allows exactly 20 people. So the policy, if I remember this line correctly, says no more than 2 minutes. So what happens if 60 people sign up? Or are we cutting off the sign up at 20, like 40? I mean, 20. I'm not understanding how the math is working.
So that is, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was another idea that was put forth by a couple board members, was when more than 20 sign up, that we divide the entire time among those people.
Yes, and that's exactly what's going to happen. And so now I go from preparing a 3-minute commentary, which could possibly be a 2-minute commentary, which could also be less than 30 seconds. So I don't, again, understand the problem we're trying to solve, other than further frustrating the public, because I still don't know what to expect from public participation. This policy brings no clarity to me about how I should prepare for my comments. If I prepare for 3 minutes and I get here and I'm number 46 on the board, then I've got to edit my comments on the fly. So again, I'm just not sure the problem the policy was designed to solve from the beginning. I kind of get the let's talk about what's on the agenda. That never worked. It never worked. So don't feel bad, Frida, that you didn't stop anybody because it never worked. From the time we implemented it, it never worked and we allowed it to go forward. So I always caution us in any organization about creating policies that you cannot enforce.
Oh,
That's problem number one. Can we
Can I-
enforce it?
I just want to add really quickly, that is why we did not include
I understand that.
portion. So
Yeah,
it will
but
be
I
like
don't-
20 minutes, 20 people cut off.
I can't hear you.
It will be 20 people,
But that doesn't say this.
right?
It's implied in the math, because what you said is that it would be no more than 2 minutes for 40 minutes. I mean, no more than 2 minutes per person for a 40-minute
Right.
time period. So I can do the math, but the no more than 2 doesn't say it has to be 20 people. So are you saying, is this policy then to say something totally different? That we will have public participation for 40 minutes with no more than 20 participants at a meeting? Is that what that's meant to say? Because the time really doesn't matter at that point. You can just say, if I got 20 and I'm 40 minutes, you get 2 minutes. It's not less than, it's not no more than, it's 2 minutes.
There is a caveat in here that the board chair shall set the amount of time allotted to each speaker. So should we have a
So how do I do
situation
that? So I've got
where more
20
than
if I'm
20
saying
has
it's no more
signed
than
up,
20.
the board chair could make the decision
So you
to
do the
give
math.
everyone less
But
time.
again, I'm still doing the math on the fly. So even if I came prepared with a 2-minute presentation, you're telling me I could have a minute and 30 seconds, a minute and 17 seconds. Like, who's doing that math on the fly? And what's the messaging that I'm supposed to say to the person who's come prepared with 2 minutes worth of remarks?
Yeah.
And I want to be clear, I'm not against a policy. I'm against a policy that doesn't bring clarity and further frustrates the public.
My request would be that it's a set number of people. Currently, what happens is if those people sign up after the timeline, which is probably the best example that we have in this situation, the board office reaches out to those individuals to let them know that they've missed the timeline and that kind of thing. I can see your point of people might be coming number 22 and expect to still speak, and then they're not able to. I do want to make sure that we're clear that the 70 people was like 2015.
Sure what the pandemic.
It wasn't
It
2015.
was almost 8 years ago.
It was a while ago.
It was a
like-
while. It was
It was a while ago. So we
related
don't
to the building of a
have-
new high school.
we don't commonly have that number of people anymore after
Give it again.
COVID and frankly, charter parents and advocates saving those comments for the charter commission. And there's not school closures. So we don't commonly have that huge number, but that doesn't mean that we would never have them again. That's absolutely possible.
But we commonly have more than 20.
So I could say that we haven't had more than 20 in a long time, except for the COVID policy stuff. That's true. So I would say that we may need to have some clarity there, that it's an exact number, just in case that happens. I do think it would be difficult for people to maybe modify on the fly if they're number 22. So I could see that being a friendly amendment. Those persons, of course, could maybe get first on the next docket, or of course, they could always email us or call us or contact us, or a lot of us meet people individually. But maybe we need to have that so there's not that on the fly situation in this case where we have more than 20 people.
Were you finished with your, go ahead.
Well, I apologize. Just one more thing, but you just brought up another point, and I just want to make sure I'm understanding you clearly. Am I coming and finding out it's 22 people, or is somebody letting me know before I get here? The other one?
Currently, as the policy reads, is you would not be told that because in no case should there be more than 2 minutes per person. But the board chair could set the amount of allotted time. I guess in practice, but it would be up to each individual board chair. For me personally, I would let those people know in advance.
Well, let's go back.
But
So
that
if
would
your
not be
friend-
till the day before.
But if your friendly amendment is to cap it at 20, then if somebody's at 21.
They would know
They
in
need to
advance.
know long before, or the system needs to say, we've reached our capacity for public participation.
They currently are notified and would still
Okay.
be. Yes. We could put that, of course, in there, but yes, they are currently notified.
I'm going to let Dr. Severe, he has a
Dr.
comment.
Gentry, we would probably stick very closely to the way we manage it now, that there's a cutoff time, which is noon on the day before. But once we also reach that number of 20, we would also we would post up the message and disable the sign up during that window. So there may be one that snuck through in the middle of the night. You know, I mean, people, believe it or not, people sign up at all manner of time to speak. But that's something that could be pretty easily addressed the next morning by our office, if it was just one or two people.
Wait, okay, it's Cheryl and then Abigail.
And mine is really quickly. So I appreciate the comments on the friendly amendments, but I think the right thing to do is to actually make these amendments part of the policy so that we don't have this back and forth continuing, because we're frankly going to get nowhere if we continue going this route. I would absolutely love to see those amendments made part of the policy.
Yeah.
So my original amendment for this was to make it a 1 hour time frame where I had to reconfigure everything. My original change said the total time dedicated to public participation at any meeting of the board shall be no more than 1 hour. The board chair shall set in no case shall that time be more than 3 minutes per person. If more than 20 people have requested to speak, the board chair shall divide the allotted 1 hour time to give speakers no less than 2 minutes and no more than 3 minutes to speak. The chair will move through the list in the order of which each speaker signed up, which gives a guarantee to the speakers that they have a minimum of 2 minutes to speak and a maximum of 3 minutes to speak. And it could be, you only get 2 minutes if we go more than 20 people. If we're less than 20 people, everybody gets 3 minutes. And I did that on purpose for that exact reason, so that people wouldn't show up with a 3-minute speech and then be told they only have a minute and a half to talk, because that's not fair. So I wanted people to say, because I have personally written speeches to go present to someone where I've had a 2-minute version and a 3-minute version, depending on what I needed to say. That's not hard to do. But if you've got to cut it halfway or you only get 1 minute, that is hard to do. And that's not easy to do on the fly. But if you know ahead of time that you have at least, you will get a minimum of 2 minutes to speak no matter what, but you will never be allowed to go over 3 minutes, then you can just create, I'll just not say these 4 or 5 sentences. That was my personal compromise for that.
So what I'm hearing is, I haven't heard any exact amendments proposed yet, but I'm hearing the possibility of setting a maximum number of individuals. I'm also hearing the possibility of rewording in a way that there's a little more flexibility around the number of people, but that there's a set time frame of 2 to 3 minutes.
I would like to propose an amendment that we add a stipulation or to the exact number of participants who could speak during the public participation period.
Okay.
No more, to be no more than 20 people, or limited to 20 people.
So on lines 18 and 19, where currently we have the board chair shall set the amount of time allotted to each speaker. However, in no case shall that time be more than 2 minutes per person. We might reword it to,
Just say after 40, no more than 40 minutes, comma, or 20 speakers. Because 20 speakers, if you don't get less than that, it'd be less than 40 minutes.
okay. We could sort of like flip it. Each speaker shall be allotted up to 2 minutes to speak, and
I just
there
don't
will be
like
no more than 20 speakers.
And this also provides an opportunity, if we have 5 people signed up in that time period, the board chair could also adjust those time periods to make sure that we are still within that 40-minute time period. Does that make sense? I mean, I don't want to get outside of that. I think
Period. Sorry, I'm speaking out of order. You're gonna set a timer, just set a timer, like the 2-3 minutes, no, it's just.
Yes.
Keep a minute.
So let's-
Yeah. Just time limit.
Yeah, the amendment should, and I'll restate that, the amendment should be to limit the number of participants per board meeting to 20 people in this 40-minute time slot.
Okay.
May I
I make-
restate the motion just to make sure I have it correct for the record? The board chair shall set the amount of time allotted to each speaker. However, in no case shall that time be more than 2 minutes per person and no more than 20 total speakers.
That works.
May I make a second friendly amendment to that friendly amendment?
Okay, we got that one, down? Everybody got that?
We haven't
Anybody?
voted on that one.
Okay, yes, Board Member Tyler.
Okay, so my friendly amendment would be to remove the board chair sets the time and just leave it at 2 minutes if that's the case, period. You get 2 minutes, that equals 20 people, we're done.
Okay. So,
There's no reason for the board chair to set the time if they don't ever get more than 2 minutes, no matter what, and we only have 20 people, then there's no reason to say anything about them setting the time and creating the confusion that it could be less than.
so that would be a removal of line 18, the board chair, through, however, on line 19. And instead it would read, in no case shall that time be more than 2 minutes per person or more than 20 people.
Are y'all okay with 2 minutes? I love 3 minutes.
No, 2 minutes is fine.
2 minutes.
And I think we have successpardly beaten this horse to death.
Need a second
Can you
on
read
it.
that back to us? The friendly amendment? I apologize.
I have it at, the total time dedicated, this is line, I guess, 17. The total time dedicated to public participation remarks at any meeting of the board shall be no more than 40 minutes and with 2 minutes per person and no more than 20 total speakers.
Okay. Do I need the original person who made the motion to restate it, adding the amendment? Yeah, I think I
Or
do.
do we just need a reason? Oh,
Okay, sorry. I did,
Sorry, I shouldn't have stated, I shouldn't have formed that in the form of a question. I do need you to do that.
I make a motion to approve the policy with the amendment,
I didn't write it down.
You want me to bring it to you?
yeah, whatever, yes. I didn't know I was restating the motion with the amendment, that's,
Total time.
with the total time dedicated to public participation remarks at any meeting of the board shall be no more than 40 minutes with
No more
no more than 2 minutes per person
and no more.
and no more than 20 total speakers. Thank you, Dr. Sarita.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. And to the question of what problem are we solving, I think the main points addressed in here are the initial issue that we knew, which was only speak about things on the agenda. I think there's definitely a feeling that that was not working. And then the potential issue, and an issue we have had, though rare, in the past, of having a very, very lengthy public participation to the point where it becomes difficult to do the rest of the work of the board. As to whether or not we have landed on a time and number of people and allotted time for speaking that everyone is satisfied with, I mean, I would hope at the very least everyone is equally dissatisfied and no one person is more dissatisfied than anyone else. So I'll just go ahead and bring this to a vote. All in favor of passing this policy as amended, please raise your hand. And none opposed? You are opposed? Okay, and one nay. All right. It moves on to the consent agenda for final approval during our meeting. This governance committee meeting is adjourned.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.